Hey, everybody, welcome to Love Relo, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I'm so blessed and honored to be here with Sarah Sanger, attorney and owner of Sanger Strategies. Sarah, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. Yeah. I'm up in
Yeah,
Toronto and it's been really terrible weather, but right now we finally have some sunshine and some warmth, so couldn't be better.
yeah, that Canadian weather got all the way down here to Texas for a
Yeah.
while. It was chilly
Sorry
down
about
here.
that.
My pool was freezing. I had to have a guy come out and look at my hot tub. It's like it was a problem. But I think we're on the other end of it. Today was 74 Fahrenheit down here, so life is good down here in Texas. And I'm glad to hear some of our weather got up there to you, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I did see some memes saying, hey, Canada, come get your weather.
Yeah,
So,
come get that weather back. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
glad we were able
Um,
to do that.
yeah, I'm excited for today's conversation because I think it's super timely. We're talking about, I want to hear about your journey and your story. We're talking about U.S. business immigration, but we're also talking a little bit about AI, and we're talking about maybe three behaviors that can limit you in your global mobility career, and maybe some recommendations that you're going to share with us, Sarah. So I think it couldn't be more timely with all the changes that we're seeing right now in this moment, and I'm really excited to have you on talking about it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, get in the comments, everybody, and leave a question if you got one for Sarah. We're going to be taking questions throughout. If you got questions kind of about your career or about technology or just kind of about business immigration and everything, so just get in the comments. We'll try to prioritize those. But first, before we get into all that stuff, Sarah, I got to ask you a little bit. Oh, look, we got Adrian's checking in here. Sunny Dal, he's rubbing it in. You know.
That's okay. We have sunshine here too today, so I'm not even mad.
Yeah, you're still in our solar system, so you have the same sun we have, Adrian. Yeah. So anyway, I want to ask you a little bit though about your journey and how you kind of got started in this industry.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, well, when I graduated college, 2007, and that was right before some of y'all will remember a huge market crash. So, I got a
Yes.
job out in San Francisco working for Fragaman, Delray Burns, and Aloe as legal assistant slash paralegal doing business immigration, and kind of immediately was thrust into this huge, lots of layoffs and
Crash thing.
closures, startup crashes.
I want to ask you though, real quick, because I also kind of entered the workforce at the same time. I was supposed to graduate in '05. It took me a lot longer than that. That's another story. But I hit the workforce running in '05, '06. And I'll be honest, I didn't know. And shout out to Tamara Dykes there. Excited to listen to this
Hi,
one.
camera.
Good to see you there. Get in the comments here with questions as well. And where were you in '08? I want to know from everybody watching, where were you in 2008? What job were you doing? Were you in school still? Let me know. Put it in there. I think we can all commiserate around this. But I'll be honest with you, I was working in a call center for
Ooh.
pods in Florida, in Clearwater, Florida, and I wasn't really aware of the '08 market crash. I could,
Ooh.
looking back on it, like they were doing rifts in our organization. People were calling us like, "Oh, I need to move tomorrow because I'm getting foreclosed, but that's too much money. I can't afford," you know. But I didn't know what was happening macro. Like, how aware were you as a, kind of a younger person, early career at that point, of how momentous this problem was in '07, '08?
So I was really aware. I think it just had a lot to do with my location and industry. So I was in San Francisco, which is Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Um, so it was, visceral. Like people were being losing their jobs every day. The city was changing visibly. Our office went from, and these are just guesstimates at this point because my memory is terrible, but like 80 people to 20 people,
Wow. 80
a
to
whole floor
20.
to half a floor kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah. There were businesses, that went out of business, and, for lease signs. And it was, I was very aware because I think, tech startups had just a boom, and then this was a major retraction. And so that being in San Francisco, it just was very impactful.
Yeah. I yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. Greg Hoover says school was a bit before '08 for me. Was the COO at Atlas World Group in beautiful Evansville, Indiana, which is even more beautiful today. Yeah, Gabby checking in. Our mutual friend Gabby. We love Gabby. Talk about resilience. What a time to be in immigration. I was an immigration paralegal at that time.
Yeah, hi Gabby. Yeah, we were paralegals, not together, but in the same circles.
In parallel,
Yes.
paralegals in parallel.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about, okay, so you were at Fragment about that time, and all right, let's pick up your story from there.
Sure. Okay. So it continues on. I went to law school in Washington, D.C. at American University. And so Fragment was actually nice enough to hire me there in DC. So I went to law school, but continued also to work. I feel like I'm beyond the time when I can get into trouble for this. I wasn't supposed to work as a 1L, but I did. I'd always worked while going to school. So I worked the whole time.
So is that a rule? You're not supposed to work while you're.
That was a rule. I think you had to be not until your 2L year.
Sorry,
I don't
1L,
know, like,
2L,
how strict of a
1L, 2L means what again? I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry about that. So yeah, your law school's 3 years. So your first year is 1L, your second year is 2L, and your third year is 3L. So in your first year of law school, I was told I'm not supposed to work.
Okay.
But
you got to work, you got to make ends meet here, people, right?
Well, exactly. Those loans don't cover much,
No.
and I do love the finer things in life. So
Yes, these JDs don't pay for themselves, do they?
they sure don't. That's true.
So anyway, continue there.
So keeping on, I took a brief reprieve when I graduated because in law school I had done clinic. DC is amazing because it has a student program where in your third year, if you're under a supervising attorney, you can actually practice and be in court. So I did a clinic. I had a case in court. It was a family-based case, I think child support. And I kind of got the bug for litigation. So I took a beat for about a year or two after to kind of do a hybrid where I was doing some immigration, but also litigation, mainly family with some civil.
Okay, I got to ask, I got so many questions. This is so cool. And
Yeah.
I've been binging Suits over the past year and a half. So, you talking about you talking about litigating and stuff. And I'm like, all right, were you Harvey? Were you Jessica? Were you Mike? No, but like, what was it about litigation that appealed to you? Because a lot of people don't litigate. I mean, I think that people that don't understand law don't realize that a lot of lawyers never go in a courtroom really like that.
I know. And that is part of, so I love it. I love being in court. Love.
Yeah. Wow.
The problem with litigation is that you're not in court very often. The whole system is sort of encourages settlement, which is not necessarily, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but
you want to duke it out. You're like, let's go.
I
came to win.
Argue, And so most of the time is spent just talking to opposing counsel, talking to your client, trying to strategize your case and get the best deal possible. And then you settle out of court. I wasn't in court that often. And that's the part I really liked. And the other thing about litigation is it's really emotionally draining. Like the vast majority of the time when you're in court, you're representing somebody who's in a bad way. Like if you think about your own life, how often have you been to court?
Not often, and I want to forget it. When I think I was there one time for a speeding ticket where I was going like 23 over, and I had to appear, and like it was stressful.
Yes, if you're in court, usually something like pretty bad is going on, and so the attorneys that do this are really resilient and emotionally resilient. They have really good, healthy boundaries. I don't, I'm like, I really like care immensely and deeply, and I empathize.
Yeah.
And so it was really, it only took, like I said, like 2 years for me to be like, I miss business immigration. Like I can't do this level of sort of advocacy and emotional advocacy, as a long-term career.
Well, you're talking about family law and, but I mean, but business immigration, well, I guess maybe less so than personal, situations, but people's lives are still on the line. These decisions have, generational impacts with families and companies.
100%, Ben. And I will tell you that piece of my job has changed. And I think a lot of my colleagues will relate to this, which is that this is back in the day still. So, this is now, we're in 2012, 13, 14. Business immigration was pretty stable at that point, in the sense that it was a lot easier to kind of know ahead of time what was and wasn't going to work. The processing times were pretty decent. It
How long
really,
ago was this when you're talking about processing times are decent and
like a decade
things
ago,
like a decade ago? Like the good old days, right? We're at a
10,
certain
12
age
years
where we're like
ago.
the good old days. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you think about like 2007 to 2014, my experience with business immigration was pretty, like, it wasn't super harrowing from an
No.
emotional standpoint. It was
Right.
pretty like administrative, corporate. It's not like it is today.
Mhm.
When during the first Trump administration, and then also the pandemic compounding some of those policy impacts, that's when it really became. And today we're back there. It doesn't matter that it's business immigration, it's still so emotional. People are losing their jobs, they're losing their status, they're losing their homes, they're having to move their children, outside of the only home they've ever known, like on short notice. That wasn't going on back then. So when I say like that I wanted the emotional reprieve of getting back into immigration, that's just to give some context of why that was true at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, super interesting, and I love talking to folks that have been doing this for a while, because you do start to see kind of the ebbs and flows of the business and how we go through these cycles. And you talk about '07, '08, and now we're talking about this administration that we're in. I mean, there's all these factors that kind of disrupt the flow and the how we anticipate things working, and I think it's it's obviously really scary, right? And it's really challenging. But it's also why people need us as professionals too. And so it presents an opportunity, I think,
Yeah,
in the market as well.
100%. We're needed now more than ever.
It feels that way, and it feels like global mobility. I was talking to a room full of practitioners, global corporate folks, a couple weeks ago. We were doing an immigration roundtable thing, and everyone was kind of, we were all kind of down. We're talking about things, and it's really easy for it to go negative real hard.
Of course, yeah.
And I said, well, just remember though, we've always wanted a seat at the table. We've always wanted to be in the room where it happens and be at the decision making, crux of the decision making. And now we have that opportunity. Global mobility is front page news in so many ways right now. And it has been kind of since COVID,
Yeah.
where people are repatriating and migrating and then Brexit, and like there's just all this stuff going on the last 5 years really. And it's like this is kind of what we've asked for in a way. This is the moment that our industry, I think, has sought out as we've searched for relevancy in our organizations. So often, global mobility practitioners describe themselves, as kind of on an island in their own organization where people don't know what they do and don't know how to plug in, and nobody asks their opinion. They're reactive, not proactive, because like here's a file, go make it happen, not what should we do, and part of the decision making process. So I think it's a real opportunity. Once we can deal with and stabilize what's going on right now, I think there's a real opportunity for us to achieve a level of strategic importance and relevance in organizations that we haven't seen for a while.
absolutely. Yeah. I think policy, is so important now and there's so much more room to provide strategic guidance. Things are at a point now in terms of costs and risks that it will impact major corporate decisions, whether you acquire an entity or you don't, whether you enter an industry or you don't, whether you seek certain talent or you don't. Whereas to your point, like before, when the stakes were like a little lower and things were smoother, yeah, it was just a downstream kind of, all the other decisions happened not considering immigration costs, risks, impacts. And then they just told mobility, okay, make it happen. And
Yep.
mobility would, right?
Yeah.
And now we're kind of in that stage of saying, look, you've got to loop me in way earlier in these discussions and in this process, because I may have information that'll materially impact, what direction you want to go in.
Yeah, so right. And I think this is a great segue into talking about how to manage kind of our careers as global mobility professionals. And I know this is something that's super passionate, that you're super passionate about. There you've kind of identified three behaviors that can really hold you back as a global mobility professional. Would you share those with us?
Yeah, for sure. And I wouldn't say as a caveat, because I'm a lawyer and I love caveats, that these behaviors I have seen be unsuccessful. But the caveat is this: there are so many large market shifts and geopolitical shifts, economic shifts, corporate and technological transformations happening right now, that no matter how great we are at our job and no matter how positive our behaviors are, we might still be negatively impacted by those factors. So
Sure.
these behaviors, when we talk about them, I'm in no way am I suggesting that if you do this, you'll be fine. Or if your job is at risk, it's because you didn't, you were engaging
Yeah.
in these, I think it's just like I've kind of collated a lot of data from working for so many years with mobility. And then as I've gotten more senior in my career, I've been asked by a lot of companies not just to work with their mobility personnel, but to actually kind of evaluate them. Like, how is the function working for us? Where can we improve? And so just from doing all of that, there's these three things I've kind of identified as buckets where you may want to reframe your thinking. And I think a lot of them are related to your point, the AI transformation, technology transformation, and even just the larger kind of HR transformations that these large companies are undergoing. A lot of businesses are asking themselves, like, what can AI do for me? What can technology do for me? Where can I change and become more efficient and more lean? So they're broadly resisting the transformation.
Resisting transformation. So
Yeah,
let's put that up there, Samara.
sure.
Resisting transformation. This is one of the first of three behaviors Sarah's identified. What does this mean? Talk about this. How have you seen this?
So there are mobility professionals that really embrace transformation, but there's a lot that are kind of immediately threatened by them.
Why would
And
they be threatened by it?
And the thing I was going to say, and the thing is that the feeling threatened is rational, because to a certain extent, AI is coming for part of our jobs, because the part of our jobs that we do that's highly administrative, where it's just kind of passing data from one place to another or producing a document out of a template, answering the same question over and over, like these things that are more administrative, AI is coming for those parts of our job. And so the threat is real. However, it's a waste of energy, because the transformation is happening.
Yeah.
Just like we're not going to turn back the hands of time on electricity or the internet, we're not going to turn back the hands of time on AI and automation and the improvement of technology in executing functions. So the problem with resisting is twofold. So one is, as I said, it's just a waste of energy that you could be spent thinking, okay, if I accept this, what is my role in managing this? So you can be the AI owner, the AI's boss, and also with technology transformation, there's a lot of room for like change management.
Yep.
And so what
I,
is your role in that?
I think this is really interesting. I'd like to weigh in a little bit on this too. And
Yeah. Yeah.
going through my career, I've been a part of a lot of change management, and resisting transformation feels a lot like change management, right? And the same type of topic. And I remember going through a couple changes because we were acquired a couple times and new leadership and all that stuff. And it dawned, I was living in Florida at the time, and an analogy occurred to me I want to share with you, that change management or transformation, going through transformation, is like riding on a jet ski. If you're driving the change, you're driving the jet ski.
Yes.
If you're being driven, then you're riding on the back, and it's the same jet ski. It's just a whole different experience,
Yeah.
And that's
a great analogy.
And that's why we, as leaders, we might be like, yeah, we're going to change, we're going to transform, it's going to be phenomenal. And we're looking out at a whole bunch of faces that are scared to death because they're riding on the back of this jet ski. And we're driving it, we're hitting the jumps, and we're having a great time. And they're freaking out on the back, like, slow down, slow down, we're not ready. And so I think we have to remember that and have some empathy too when we go through that as organizations.
Absolutely. Well, and that's also part of it is not only is it not putting your energy kind of in a more useful place, because rarely, if ever, have I seen a transformation not go forward, and certainly not because of any particular individual, right? It would take some major corporate economic shift for it to be, to change course or to delay. So not only is it just not a good use of our energy, but also while we're in the process of avoiding or resisting, we're starting to get a bit of a reputation for being difficult, for being outdated, for not being agile. And so then, because I've seen this as well, let's say after 6 months or so, I do finally accept it. I'm like, okay, all right, whatever. You win, it's happening. You've kind of built up this 6 months of maybe not great perception on your skill set and your attitude, So it's not helpful.
I totally agree with this. It's like a stream, right? A stream is flowing, and that's the transformation. And when you put up an impediment, you're like putting a rock in front of the stream. And what does the stream do? It goes around the rock, right? Until it starts to carve out a new path. And now you're like, all right, well, I'll play along. It's like, yeah, but we already have a new process with new people leading it, and and it's too late, So to your point, you have to say yes first.
Yeah.
Go home and deal with it.
Yes.
And figure it out. But you got to say yes, or else you're right. People will just go around you. They'll stop going to you, and that's a shame. And I love the fact that you highlight that and explain that to people, because I think people don't understand why sometimes people start working around them. How come I'm not being involved in decision making? It's like because you weren't down with it to begin with when we were trying. We got some great comments coming in. Get in the comments. Let us know what you think about transformation, specifically AI transformation, the way that we manage through change and how we adapt to this kind of stuff. Put it in the comments. Hit that like button. Sarah Sanger's dropping gems over here. Gabby says, I think AI adoption within HR may take a little more time than in other functions. What do you think?
Oh, well, I feel like, Gabby, you would know better than me, because HR is mainly the functions I'm I'm dealing with, but it does take more time. I think one of the things about that I would say is AI is expensive still, or like largely expensive to do a lot, not just AI, but to do all of the software systems transformation and AI integration for your organization. And HR is still right. It's an expenditure. It's not a profit
Yes.
area.
Cost center,
So
right.
yeah. So I think that I have seen be to your point, Gabby, like take longer or be less efficient or aggressive or organized only because they're really focused first on implementing it in areas where it can actually make the company money. Whereas in HR, it's saving the company money. And
Yeah.
they tend to prioritize profit over savings. But I also think that AI now at this point is starting to become something that's more affordable, that's better work, that works better right out of the box. So I think we're going to see a speeding up of the impact on HR and other functions that are really about savings rather than a profit.
Gabby, explain to us why you think that. It's an interesting premise that you have here that's going to take longer in HR. I'd love to know why you think that is. Tamara here weighs in and says it's not that AI will take our jobs first. It's those individuals that have been educating themselves on AI that will take our jobs first. Wow.
I
Tamara,
mean,
that
that's
is an
kind of like
interesting point.
saying the same thing, right? Like the people that
Yeah.
don't resist, that are like, sure, I'll work with AI. I'll learn about it. I'll work
Yeah.
with it. They're going to be the ones that survive, probably.
Yeah. Fantastic point. I really like that point. Let's hop into the second behavior that you've seen, Sarah, start to hold people back.
Okay, so this is one of my faves, which is gatekeeping.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so mobility historically has been, like you said, Ben, a bit in the shadows, and
Mhm.
so I think that people have created a lot of work for themselves as being the middle person. So I'm going to own the relationships with the business and get the information from the business. And I'm going to own the relationships with the vendors and the experts in
Yeah.
tax and immigration and relocation. And I'm going to have those conversations. And so we start to play this game of telephone. And, but I think that for the most part, it's not successful. The reason
Why not?
is because one, it's a duplication of efforts and necessarily inherently requires multiple conversations and therefore delay. Second, like with telephone, when you're relaying information from one person to another rather than connecting those people, you're not always getting it right. So it puts a lot of pressure on mobility to be sort of the source of truth when they're neither the expert nor the business person. So they may not even have access to the data they need to be the source of truth. So it's like a bit of a liability actually to put
Yes.
yourself as the middle
Right. Because
person.
now you're also, if you're gatekeeping, you're also going to be the one that's dropping the ball. Because if you're playing telephone and you don't relay the message,
Yes.
then you're to blame.
Yes. And if you don't relay it properly, um, and so, but I think people ask themselves, and I understand this, which is sort of like, if I connect the business directly with the expert, then where does that leave me? What's my role? What's my job? But, I don't think that's the right viewpoint, because your job in that context is, you are the relationship manager, you're the escalation point, you're the internal resource that understands where all the other parts of your business need to go to get what they want.
Yeah.
You're the one who can think of inventive and new tools and ways to connect these parties. And you can own those tools and resources. So there's a lot you can do that still puts value on you, but doesn't put you as a stopping block in between these parties that really ultimately need to connect.
Yeah, I love this. Hit that like button, get in the comments. I want to know what you think. What I'm also thinking of as you're saying this is it's almost better, instead of being the expert yourself, it's better to be the curator of experts. So people still go to you to get the information or to get connected to the right person. You're a connector, but now you don't have to always deliver the information or do the work, frankly, yourself directly.
Yeah. Yeah. And then that frees you up to your point, Ben, to be the strategic advisor and
Now
to
you're
think
strategic.
higher level,
Yeah.
to be policy,
Hmm.
engagement management, relationship management. I put a little something in because I put a little article on my website about this, and I put a little quote in there that's kind of hokey, but I said, "Be the bridge and not the moat." You know,
Ooh, I
be the
like
one.
that.
Don't be the thing that it comes between. Be the one that bridges the gap.
Samara, we got to put that quote up. Be the bridge and not the moat. That's a Sarah Sanger quote there. I like that one. Let's see. We got people in the comments here. Get in the comments. Let us know what you think. Jack Taylor's agreeing with Tamara also to speak about your point, Sarah. Once AI can code really well, AI can write AI, and the major innovation begins since the barriers for entry are so low. Ooh, interesting. That's the other fear I have. I'm going to go off on a side topic. And I know you're trying to bring us to a place where we're not afraid of things, but I'm going to go back to being afraid. Okay. I'm a working use case right now in this. Um, it's not that change is happening so fast. It's the rate of change. It's like change on top of change compounded
Yeah.
change. Like when AI starts writing AI, I'm like, well, gosh, I can't, like, that's intimidating for me.
But meanwhile, I'm excited by it because I'm like, how amazing if I, in my job, because it happens all the time where I'm like, what would be so great? This actually just came up um, the other day. And I was thinking it would be so amazing. We have a library of tools for this one company. And how amazing would it be if the library of tools was automated, like some had better user interface and was better organized and also easier for each line of business to go into and figure out quickly which would be the ones that most apply to it. And like I had all these ideas, right? And I'm like, I don't know how to do any of this. Like I don't know how to actually, but how amazing if I had an AI buddy that I could like put all that into and then the AI could create it for me. So the AI is doing the legwork, the administrative work, but it's still my vision, it's still my strategy, it's still like a human coming up with the ideas on how to innovate and improve business. I just think that's where we come in. Let the AI be your intern, let the
Yeah.
AI be
Yeah.
your do the grunt work.
Yeah, I love it. Tamara is saying, I always get executive buy-in quicker when Sarah comes in directly to speak to them, and I just host the discussion.
No
And
comment.
that's funny because that's almost, and that's frankly easier to do, right? I mean, you just like boom, make the introduction, set up the meeting, whatever, and then kind of just get out of the way and let the customer talk to the expert instead of having to relay it all. It's so smart. It's so
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah.
Why do we screw it up sometimes? It's so simple. I
We're
I've
just
been
trying to
wanting to
hang
do.
on to we're trying to hang on to what we've done in the past because it's what we know, and we're scared if we let that go, we're letting ourselves go. And I will say it is a really scary environment right now. There's so much transformation happening, there's so many layoffs happening. um, I get it. Like I empathize and I understand that is it's so it's not, but it's not entirely rational. Like if you take a step back and think about it, of course at some point someone's going to look at that and be like, well, why are you the go between? Why am I going through you? Why am I talking to you only to wait 3 business days and hear secondhand a message from somebody else? Like we're going to ask that question.
This is interesting. This brings up a good point that Gabby talks about, or kind of asks a question about here. Gabby says, "Great thoughts, Sarah. Cost of AI is huge for HR, but maybe could be a savings if implemented in processes." That makes me wonder about team size. Are team sizes going to change after adoption? She bets they will.
For sure. Yes. I think the jobs that are going to go away are the lower level jobs. I think there's lots of room for experienced mobility people to be the driver of the jet ski, and to own these tools and to own these processes and to be creative and proactive, and strategic thinkers that leverage this technology. And what that is going to mean is you're going to need fewer humans on your staff to do some of the work you were ordinarily delegating to them. Like some of what you were delegating to them, you're going to delegate to an AI.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I talk to my corporate friends, and a lot of their time seems to be taken up with employees asking for exceptions on the policy and them having to say no, restate policy. Then it gets escalated, so then they have to go to the. But I wonder, like, can AI do that today?
So you're bringing up an amazing point, because I would say one of the places that are where there's the biggest amount of room for growth and improvement is policy. The vast majority of companies I have worked with either have no policy or they have no good policy. And and the thing is, it's because no one's owning it and driving it. And exceptions are the sort of um, the downfall of policy. Like the more exceptions you allow to your policy, the less your policy needs. But in order to be strong on policy and enforce it with your lines of business, it has to be good policy. If it's policy that doesn't take into account the different realities and needs of each line of business or each, career rank or job type, then you're going to need those exceptions, only because the policy then doesn't make sense. So this is an area where there's just so much room for improvement, Ben.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also wonder if policy exceptions were being put through AI, if we would aggregate that data better on what people are actually asking for, what the business is most often approving. It feels like, because when I don't know if that data is really tracked the way it could be tracked.
It is not. Yeah.
And then we could almost get really predictive.
AI can help us inform. Like, I think humans still need to be the ones that create the policy, but AI can absolutely be our buddy in helping inform that and showing the business, hey, the policy needs to be this, and it needs to be this because of this data. And to your point, Ben, so many organizations don't have that visibility into their own populations and that data, and that's why they either just don't come up with a policy, or they come up with one that needs a ton of exceptions because it's not really,
hit that like button, get in the comments, let us know what you think. Can AI start to really make an impact on the policy side? Exceptions. Sarah made a statement that the more exceptions you have, kind of weakens policy. I mean, do you agree with that, or do you think maybe there's strength and flexibility? I mean, people make that argument sometimes. As a parent, I know that exceptions breed chaos, so I could be convinced of either way there. We got a couple more questions coming in before we get to the third behavior here, and this is Jack's giving a dissertation on Roman history and the elevation of jobs. Gabby is agreeing with a lot of what he's saying here. Super interesting. I love the depth of conversation sometimes that gets going here. We do have a question here, a couple of statements and questions. Tamara says people are worried about keeping their jobs, but as Sarah said, we are not adding value in the right spots. She says HR shared services will reduce first. Do you agree with that statement? Disagree with that statement?
Yeah, I mean, HR shared services is, I think, like the human equivalent of AI. It's an attempt to find a reasonably priced way to get all this admin work done. And I hope that doesn't, I don't want to disparage HR shared services, but to Jackson's point, it is about, we're talking about kind of levels, education levels, and jobs that require more or less education for entry, right? And typically the jobs we're talking about with HR shared services require less for entry, and mobility leadership, immigration leadership like would require more for entry. And I do think that we're going to have, I mean, I think Jax is making some really amazing points. Like, we're going to have a systemic problem pretty soon where AI is doing a lot of work humans used to do. It's not going to be the kind of work that's about relationship building or management. It's not going to be policy or strategy. It's going to be more administrative in nature. And so then what are all the people that were previously employed in admin jobs and well employed for years in those jobs? What are they going to do? And it's going to require the dreaded upskilling, and it's going to require education, but then our education systems aren't being invested in. So
Yes.
then,
Yeah, I like to watch old movies, right? So me and my wife, we love Turner movie classics. Nothing better than a bottle of wine and some Turner classic movies on the weekend, right? And we'll
yes,
watch these old movies, black and white, right into the color era, and you go into these, they make these movies about office buildings, right? And you see how many administrative people were buzzing around, right? You
yeah,
have people typing stuff, you have people running mail around, you have all of these everyone seemed to have a secretary back in the day, right? And you
yeah,
had all these people, right? And and you're right, like nobody has very few people have secretaries anymore or admins. I mean, a couple people do, but not many. And so yeah, those have gone away, and yet we're sitting at I don't know what the latest number is, 4% unemployment or something, right? So we've figured it out. What scares me a little bit, and Jack's got a great question here, and it's kind of where we're going with this. What scares me a little bit is how, I mean, that change happened over a few decades. This change is happening over what feels like 5 years, maybe 10 years. And so is the speed of it going to be a problem? Because you're right about upskilling, and people have to kind of go figure it out a little bit. And then what happens when AI isn't taking the low level jobs, but because they have more data and can synthesize information maybe better than we can and analyze it better than we can, they start doing more strategic work. I mean, this feels like the first time technology might take the higher level of work, unless, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I do think we're always off from that. It is possible, but I also wonder, so much sort of good decision making relies on human interaction and like relationship management, understanding the nature of a business line, who makes it up, who's needed in it. Every industry and even down to the business unit has like usually a culture, and you have to really understand, I think you have to have kind of a high EQ to be a good business leader, or an effective business leader. So I don't know, like, I don't, if AI can start to make those kinds of strategic decisions that really take into account kind of the nature of how these different cultures within your organization interact, absolutely we're going to go through more change. But I don't know how close that is, and I don't know if that's possible. I think right
Yeah.
now, like, a lot of the focus is just on information gathering, data management, and admin output. Also, AI is still unreliable in terms of information gathering. Like, so if you query HI from a set data set, then you know you're getting good information because they can only pull from that data set.
From good
But
data, yeah.
yeah, so the data that goes into it, like, if it's good stuff going into the AI, then it's good stuff coming out.
Yeah, there's a
But
saying about that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But if it's not, like, when you just ask, like, if you're not careful, if you just ask Copilot like a question, and then it can kind of query anything, you can get all kinds of stuff that's inaccurate, that's like completely either made up or just like not relevant or not the full story. So I don't know, I don't feel like we're there yet.
Yeah, and people still aren't even reliably implementing it. So like the technology is advancing so quickly, but people's behavior using it, human beings, isn't there yet. I mean, we use it kind of still as a novelty, and we're not actually like entrusting whole processes in our business to it at a large scale. So yeah, we are still a few years away from that, for a couple of years away from that, feels like. All right, let's get to the third behavior here. And these questions are great, and the comments that are going on in here are phenomenal. I love the crowdsourcing of this stuff, and the conversations next to the conversation that happened, I think is super cool. So yes, Jackson, your dissertations are fire. Tamara, your analysis is great. Gabby, your questions are fantastic. Let's get to the third one, Sarah. What is the third behavior that holds people back?
Siloing. So working in a silo. I think this is probably not new information, but it can be really problematic when it comes time to evaluate the mobility function, because when mobility is in its own silo, two things happen. One is it creates often interpersonal conflicts between other functions, because they're both maybe saying, well, that's not my job. Well, that's HR, that's talent saying that's mobility. And when they're not integrated and they're not working cross-functionally, I've seen it time and time again. It can create a lot of tension. It can also create risk where two parties say that's not my job, and now it's falling through the cracks.
I love it. It's like that baseball. You're like watching. I don't know if you big fan. I don't know if fan of Toronto Blue Jays or not, but you're watching that pop fly in the outfield, and both people are like, I got it, and then both people decide at the end that no, I don't actually have it, and it drops right in the middle, and you're like, what happened?
We had to be coordinating.
Yes,
We had to be on the same team, and because we weren't, like, this didn't get done.
Where? Let me ask you, because you talk about integrating it with talent, and I always find it fascinating to see where global mobility sits in an organization. I've seen it sit everywhere, so many places, right? Yeah. Like where you've looked at a lot of organizations, you consult with these companies. Where, in your opinion, should global mobility sit in an organization organizationally? I'm going to ask that first.
Well, I don't think it matters where it sits. I think what matters is that it doesn't operate in a silo. It has to be integrated with talent, HR, rewards, because so much of what mobility does relies on information from those other functions. And so much of what those functions do rely on good information and advisory from mobility. So I actually put this in my article, is mobility and talent acquisition. That's a perfect example of two functions that absolutely shouldn't be operating in a silo. Because if I'm talent acquisition and I'm advising the business on new hires, I'm putting butts in seats, and I don't have a relationship and a good relationship with mobility, I'm going to misinformation. I'm going to misrepresent timelines, risks, and costs. I'm going to identify a candidate that's not a realistic candidate for other reasons. It's problematic. And likewise, if I'm in U.S. mobility in particular, and I'm doing labor market tests, and I'm deciding I'm helping decide which roles could be sponsored for a green card or not, I need talent acquisition. I need their information, their expertise. I need their support. So they need to be integrated. It's not so much that mobility has to sit within TA or sit within the same group. I don't even really care. Sit wherever you want to sit, but you have to work together. You have to have that kind of integrated communication.
I like what you're saying. I'm going to challenge here, because I feel like HR as a whole is a silo, because the business is over here trying to accomplish what the business wants to accomplish, whatever that is, right? And then like they rely on HR as a shared service to come in and support them from a talent acquisition or a mobility standpoint or whatever. But like as a whole, it feels like that function can become very reactive, because requests go in and there's outputs, but are they at the table deciding where the business is going to open a plant because of labor laws and access to talent, immigration laws? Are they deciding, about strategic rotation programs and then where does the budget for mobility and relocation and all these things sit? Does it sit at the business level? Is there a relocation budget that sits within mobility? You know, I think that's important too. When we talk about organizational silos, we also have to talk about financial ones because we create those with our budgeting process sometimes.
Absolutely. And to some extent, siloing might not be in the control of like a particular professional. Because to your point, Ben, like if an organization is itself structured that way and wants it to be structured that way. But I will say, I do feel like I see organizations moving away from that. Um, to your point about HR being in a silo, maybe it's the clients I work with, but I work with a ton of like tech and finance companies and manufacturing companies. And at the highest level, their HRBPs are very plugged in to the line of
Okay.
business, and they have to be. Where I see the gaps, though, are between the HRBPs and mobility. And where I don't see those gaps, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. But where I see those gaps, it's problematic, and
Yeah.
and the siloing is worsened because exactly to your point, Ben, the business is over here making all kinds of decisions, and only after the fact figuring out that there's hidden costs and risks and problems. And
Yeah.
I do think the HRBP is a good connector for that. I
You're
also think
100%
some of
right.
this,
That's like the whole reason for an HRBP. And you look at the compensation for HRBPs compared to other folks in HR, and they're compensated like they're a part of the business, not like they're a part of the HR organization for that
yeah,
very reason, I think.
yes, absolutely. And I also think this goes back to policy again too, because I've talked to HR professionals that are maybe less happy is they're not I see this a lot where other parts of the business will say HR owns the immigration policy and no one in HR thinks that. I've seen that. I've seen that a lot. And
Yeah.
it's like, and I don't know, I think that HR often is overlooked and not empowered, not given the teeth to create and enforce policy with their business. And then it is like, well, then how impactful is this? Like, so policy is definitely kind of related to all of this too.
I'm so happy you said that because I've seen the same thing from a provider's standpoint, right? Like if the global mobility department wants to get a new provider because they're not getting the approval rates that they want, or they're not getting the turnaround, the communication, the service that they want from a provider, they are not empowered to go out and source a new provider. Legal holds that relationship for some reason, or procurement gets, I mean, all of a sudden everyone comes out of the woodwork when you want to change a provider.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, none of them were there to support you when you weren't getting the service you needed.
Right. Right.
That blows my mind.
And they don't have the subject matter expertise.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. This is super interesting. We got some really cool comments coming out, and we're gonna do an overrated, underrated game. So do not go anywhere. Hit that like button. Sarah, I'm having such a good time talking to you about this. Gabby saying these three behaviors are so interesting. Siloing in particular is a common challenge now in organizations. Gabby, I wonder why do you think that is, and do you think that the return to office trends will change any of that? I will tell you something, Sarah. We go around every morning, my team, we do a morning huddle. We talk about our wins. We talk about one thing we have to accomplish today. We talk about any leads that came in. We talk about our key metrics, and we talk about our stocks. And it takes like 15 minutes. That's the idea, right? It's really quick, supposedly. Sometimes, I go on and on. Anyway, but it's supposed to be quick. And the stocks, I've noticed two things. Stocks are either me, the leadership, they're waiting for something from me, or they're waiting for somebody, sorry, I'm zooming in, or they're waiting for somebody who's outside of the office. So it's either a remote team member or a remote team member's waiting for something from a person that's in the office, or we're waiting for something from a client who obviously we don't work next to. But we're very rarely waiting for something from someone we work in the office next door to. And I just had this epiphany a couple days ago. And Gabby, I'm really curious what you think about that. Sarah, I'm really curious what you think about that in terms of silos.
I think silos are exacerbated by remote work. I think that remote communication and connection is possible. It does require focus and a different skill set to manage it. So, you know,
Yeah.
I worked for 6.5 years at EY. We're based in Canada, in Toronto largely. And some of you may or may not be aware, but we had a very intense, extensive lockdown. So it wasn't like the States. It was like, or in the States, it was probably akin to like New York or San Francisco. We could not really go back to an office for like 2 full years.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
we've had a lot of time to think about how do we work together better. And I will say I've had success, and we've had success in effectively working together, connecting remotely. But it does require like a totally different kind of focus and approach.
Interesting.
So,
I got one question here for Tamara before we get into the overrated, underrated. She says, Sarah, where do you see business travel sitting as the immigration compliance as an overlap with mobility?
yeah, so this is challenging because business travel is not seen as immigration, it's business travel. And so,
Right.
ostensibly, if it's real legitimate business travel, you don't need immigration or paperwork. This really comes down to the global parent. So, where the global parent sits, I think really influences where business travel, A, how kind of seriously they take business travel compliance, and B, where it sits in the organization. Um, Business travel in the US has long been more of a compliance nightmare than in most places. And because the US is so strict about what they consider to be work and not work, CBP is also really inconsistent. I love, I'll just a real quick anecdote. It was AILA conference, which is our National American Immigration Lawyers Association conference, like maybe 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And one of the CBP heads from DC came and was like, oh yeah, we allow someone to, they're not, can't work in the US, but they can check their email. We understand some remote work is coming. It's just about like, what's the primary purpose of the visit? If you're coming with your family, for a vacation, but you're going to be doing some work while you're there doing your vacation, like we understand that that's going to happen. And then, which was so lovely to hear, but I was like, that's like, you've got 150,000 plus colleagues and they don't all agree with you, on that. So the US is challenging from a business travel standpoint. And I think the more US centric your organization is, the more likely business travel is going to sit with your in-house mobility person in the US. And the more non-US centric your organization is, the more likely it's going to sit. It's either not going to exist at all, or it's going to sit with like a global HR type function.
Wow. Super interesting. Yeah, that's a great perspective. All right, let's get into overrated, underrated. You want to play a game with me, Sarah?
Sure.
All right, let's do it. We're going to play overrated, underrated. Thanks everyone for sticking around. The comments have been lit. Hit that like button, get in here. Let Sarah know if you agree or disagree with her answers here. This is high stakes. You said you like litigation. This is going to bring you back to your courtroom days, okay? All right. Now, there's 2 rules to this game, okay? First rule is I'm going to give you a topic. I'm going to ask you, is it overrated or underrated?
Okay.
Second is I'm then going to tell you if you are right or wrong.
Okay.
The people who laugh, by the way, at that joke are the smart people in the world. They understand that this is fully subjective. Anyway, let's get in here. But yes, we do like to judge. Here we go. So first one up, overrated, underrated, DE&I. Oh man, this is we're throwing hardballs from the first one out.
Yeah, underrated DE&I for sure. Underrated.
Yeah. And I'm gonna agree with you on this one. It's been under a lot of fire here in the States. I mean, it couldn't be under more fire, really.
Yeah.
And I think more now than ever, DE&I is underrated. I saw somebody post recently. They're like, "Which one do you not agree with? Diversity,
Right.
equity, or inclusion?"
Equity or inclusion, right? Like, I really hate inclusion.
Yeah, I can't stand inclusion. No, but it's like I think yeah, it's just become a very politically charged, and it's really not. It's just human
Yeah,
at the end of the day.
I agree. I mean, if anything, let me take another spin on this, which is the term DEI is overrated in the sense that we need to start saying diversity, equity, and inclusion, because I think
The words.
calling it DEI is part of the problem, because it's easy for people. I don't like DEI. Someone posted, my daughter doesn't work for DEI. I'm like, DEI is not a company. It's a
It's not a
diversity.
federal agency.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's not, I think people are genuinely getting confused and thinking DEI is like an agency or a department, rather than concept. So I think we need to start saying it out, the whole thing
Yeah.
out.
All right, next one up. Overrated, underrated, virtual happy hours.
Ooh, underrated.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yes.
Why?
Oh, because so remember I was telling you, like, we found good ways to like connect even though we're remote.
Right.
But you've got part of that is you have to connect in the fun times too. I also love this personally. Like, I have friends from high school, I have friends from college I'm still friends with. And I love doing virtual happy hours with them. We can't see each other that often. We're all scattered across the continent, sometimes the world. And virtual happy hours are great. We sit with our wine and chat.
Yeah. I personally don't think virtual happy hours hold a candle to in-person happy hours. However, I do think they're underrated. Anything with the word happy hour in it, really, I'm very pro happy hour. I had a virtual happy hour. We've kind of gotten away from them, and they've kind of gotten a bad rap here as kind of a vestige of COVID, But I had a virtual happy hour with a college buddy of mine a few nights ago, well, probably a couple weeks ago now. And we actually planned a trip together to New Orleans.
Nice.
And I haven't hung out with this guy for 4 years. And we're like, it's been too long. We got to do this. Like, let's just commit. And yeah, it took a little bit of whiskey was going on, which made it help us click the book button on that flight, and
They
everything.
don't call it Bourbon Street for nothing.
Yeah. And so we just decided we're going to do it. And now we got it all set up, and like, I'm so excited. So I wouldn't have had the in-person without the virtual. And so, yeah, anyway. All right. 2 points so far for Sarah. All right. Let's go here. Dachshunds, overrated, underrated.
Oh my, well, I'll answer.
What do we
your
got
question here? Hang on a minute.
Uh-oh. We got props.
We have props.
We got props.
I'm obviously going to say they're underrated because you could never overrate this job.
Oh, that's a sweetie right there. What's your dog's name?
This is Gregory. I'm sorry, I
Oh.
just woke him up from a nap.
Greg is
This
like,
is
what?
Gregory.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, he's a sweetie.
He's very
How old is Gregory?
He's underrated. He's 10 and a half. He's going to be 11 in May.
Yeah.
He's not trying to be rude, I promise.
I like old dogs. I prefer old dogs. Young dogs, they got too much energy. They're yapping all over. They're running around. They're getting into stuff. Old dogs like, let me nap. Old dogs do what I want to do. Me and old dogs are on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
Like, let me take a nap,
Lay about.
eat, nap again. Go outside for like a minute, come back in. Yeah, this is great. Gabby's saying, "OMG, adorable." Yes. People are
Hi,
loving.
Baby Boo. Okay, you want to go back to bed? Do you want to go back to bed? Okay.
I heard he's got a nickname. What's his nickname?
Yeah, so this guy is also known as G Money.
G Money.
G Money. G Money. Yeah. And he does respond to it if you call him.
He does?
Yeah, he does.
G Money.
G Money.
He's making eye contact. He's like, what?
He's like, what do you want? What do you need?
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Jack says all dogs are incredible. They are all underrated. All right, awesome. All right, you get a point for that one.
Thank
All
you.
right, next one up here. The rodeo.
Ooh, underrated. I went to the Calgary Stampede last year for my first rodeo ever and had a wonderful time.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never been to the Calgary Stampede, but I've seen it on TV because we go to the Fort Worth Stockyard and Rodeo or Stock Show and Rodeo here in Dallas, Fort Worth. And I think it's the best in the world. But I know people are partial to their own rodeo, but it's my first rodeo. So I go there, and in the summertime when it's hot as all get out here, we go into the cowboy bars, and on the TV is the Calgary Stampede.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where the heck are they out there in long sleeves and jeans and boots right now? And I'm like, oh, up in Canada. That's where they're doing their summer rodeo. So
Yeah.
I got to check it out.
You really should. You'd have fun. You'd enjoy it. Calgary is a good time. The whole city basically shuts down for the week. There's party tents all over. There's concert venues all over. It's really fun.
That sounds awesome. That sounds awesome. All right, definitely a point for the rodeo. Also, my favorite Garth Brooks song, Rodeo. All right, last one up. You're 4 for 4 right now. Hot tubs, overrated, underrated.
Oh, underrated. Every single one has been underrated, but I love a hot tub or a thermal bath. Also, I love like a hot spring hot tub.
Nice. Now you're up in Canada. I hear it's chilly up there sometimes. Do you do the old winter hot tub?
Oh yes, I won't hot tub in the summer, but when it's cold and snowy and you're in a hot tub, that's amazing. That's perfect right there.
I do. I love that too. So I just bought a house here, and we have a hot tub. But shout out to my wife. She just got it fixed today. She's amazing. And we had some really cold weather, and we had it going. It was like 16 degrees, and we had it going. And I'm like, is the pool gonna crack? Like, what's gonna happen? But it was great. It's so nice. I got my TV out there too now, and so I watch the games. You know, it's definitely.
That's when
underrated.
you're in the hot tub, but you have a hat on. It's like, but it's nice.
Love it, love it. You know, you did Sarah Sanger a perfect 5 for 5 on overrated, underrated. Get in the comments. Let us know how she did here. People are saying yeehaw. Got my cowboy hat this year. Fantastic.
Sweet.
This is fantastic, Sarah. I had so much fun. I know we're a little over time here, but this was great talking to you. And thanks for everybody that got in the comments and left one. We wouldn't have a show without you, so thank you so much. Sarah, you want to leave us maybe with just the final thought before we sign off?
I think my final thought is just this. As I said, there's a lot happening right now, geopolitical issues and changes, economic changes. And it is important to know our own worth and to know that our self-worth is not the same as our job. And whether we have our job, career changes happen for a lot of reasons. And that is, we have to kind of weather those storms. But who we are and the value we bring goes way beyond any job that we have. So.
Yeah, I love that message. And you're already getting invitations to the Stampede this year.
I'll go back. Absolutely. Let's go.
Jack's inviting you and Jack's inviting you and Tamara to the Stampede here. I love it. Jack, that sounds awesome. I don't get the invite, Jack? What's going on? Do I need a visa to go to this thing? I don't think so, right? As long as I don't check my email, I should be fine.
I mean, assuming you're a U.S. citizen, I don't want to put you on the spot.
With no felonies. Yeah, I should be fine.
Or less than 3 DUIs.
Nice. Okay. I still got some buffer there. That's great. That's really good to hear. This has been a lot of fun. Sarah, thanks for the time. It's been wonderful talking to you.
Thanks for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
Take care, everybody, and we will see you tomorrow, right? Yeah, tomorrow. Sounds good, everybody. See you then.